Hallmarkies podcast, and we're so excited to be recording this special bonus episode of our podcast. And I'm Rachel, and Amber's here.
Hi, everybody.
And we have a special guest. Today we are talking about the show Once Upon a Time, which is airing its final season on ABC right now. And we have our friend, podcaster extraordinaire, Mike Bloom, here with us to talk about Once Upon a Time. Mike, you want to introduce yourself to our podcast?
Sure, absolutely. Let me stop eating this lovely apple tart, and before I fall asleep, I will go into my little background. So my name is Mike Bloom. I'm probably most well known as a reality television podcaster and newfound member of the reality TV press, which is something that I'm still trying to get to sort of wrap my mouth around in terms of those words. But I'm mainly known for covering shows like Survivor, The Amazing Race, Big Brother, Top Chef, RuPaul's Drag Race. But I also get into a bit of scripted content as well. I cover right now, I podcast about Saturday Night Live. I do podcasts about shows like Westworld and Stranger Things and The Leftovers when it was airing. But I'm excited to sort of, tuck into Once Upon a Time, which I covered quite literally once upon a time as well. A show that admittedly I have not thought about in a good year and a half or so. We can get into more of that when we talk about our respective histories of the show, but I'm so excited to be here with the two of you talking about this show. There's going to be a lot of magic around in fashion.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Mike Bloom is money.
Very, very little money. I'm like the dollar you find in your jeans when they come out of the dryer. Like, oh, this is nice. Doesn't change my day, but it's nice. I think I compare myself to that.
Well, we are so excited because Amber and I met through our friendship through Rob Has a Podcast that Mike has worked for, and so this is just very exciting. It's not quite
no
Rob on, but
yeah,
it's pretty close.
It's like all of our podcasting dreams are basically coming true.
Again, true Once Upon a Time fashion. These prophetic dreams are happening. We don't need to kill each other, though, so it makes them a lot better than the Once Upon a Time version. But also knowing Once Upon a Time will also all come back to life, or alternate versions of ourselves will jump through a portal and podcast should any of us, happen to succumb to anything.
And like, if anything goes wrong that shouldn't happen, memory potion, we'll be fine.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it.
So before we dove into the show, I wanted to talk a little bit just about sort of our general sort of Disney fandomhood, like where we stand at the House of Mouse. And for me, obviously, I'm like hardcore Disney fan. I've reviewed the canon twice, once on my blog and once on my channel. And so I'm really proud of that. And I don't know, I love animation. And so the only thing that from Disney that I really hate is that most of the live action remakes I don't like. There's a couple that are okay, but for the most part I don't like them. But I really like going to the parks, and I went to D23 this last year, and that was like a huge dream of mine to get to go, which is kind of like Disney Comic-Con. And it was really cool, and I love Pixar, so I'm just a huge Disney fan. So what about you, Mike?
So, as a child of the 90s, you grow up on those Disney VHS tapes that are encased in those like lovely bulky plastic cases.
Because they're so much more fragile than regular.
Exactly. It felt like they were like the Fabergé eggs of home media. Like, oh my God, these are priceless relics. So nowadays, they pretty much are priceless relics. But so I grew up, watching the traditional fare that came out around that time. I'm pretty sure my parents told me that the first movie I ever saw was Aladdin when it came out in 92. Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay. This is one of many fact checks that I'll run by you today, just so you know. Because, I got when the aughts hit and we got more into the Pixar stuff, being in high school and being a nerd and doing my own movies, I was totally into that stuff. I'll admit, when my 20s roll around, I had less money and less time to watch a lot of films. So I dropped off, around when the 2D was sort of dropping off as well. I actually remember there was a random memory of, I think it was probably New Year's Eve 2009 going into 2010. I went to go see The Princess and the Frog by myself, and it was in the movie theater. It was just me and a family of 4, and they all sat in like the third row, and the parents just kept turning around and looking at me. Like I was like, why is this man in this big peacoat sitting watching this movie? Clearly he has ulterior motives. No, I just love the music of Randy Newman, and I want to see, Anika Noni Rose kill it as Tiana. But, in finding, my girlfriend at the time who became my wife, she's pretty obsessed about that stuff as well. So we got back into it with all of the, when things were surging back, what with Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, all that stuff. And most recently, I flew over to LA briefly to do a set visit for a show that I'm covering. And I finally, it was a little bit of a late comer, but I got to see Coco on the first time on the plane. I was happy I was the window seat because then not many people were like watching the tears form in my eyes. Yes, I always love it. And I've tracked, the stuff that Rachel's been doing with the Disney canon. I follow, Doug Walker, who does the Disney Decembers retrospectives. It's another video guy, Tony Goldmark, who's huge into the Disney stuff as well. So, like, I've actually become more ingrained or knowledgeable of this stuff these past few years due to the diehards out there who really sort of drag into the more obsessive parts of the community.
All right, Amber, what about you?
I am not nearly as cool as you guys. I was gonna be funny and say, like, I hate Disney, it's the worst, but obviously that's not true, because who hates Disney? No one. But I, pretty casual relationship, just like a typical kid, like, watch all the movies when they come out, and I don't, know who directed them or any animators' names, but I really like them. I don't know.
Sounds good. No, that's good. So what is so now sort of this show, like, we'll start off with me, like, kind of my feelings about the show. For me, this show was very like junk food level show. Like, I don't think this is a good show to binge watch because I just think it's I just don't think the story, like, if you ask me, like, what happened in season 3, I'm like, I think it was Peter Pan. I don't know. All I remember is just like each week sitting down, watching it, enjoying the characters, because I think it is so well cast. And as a Disney fan, each week it was really fun to be like, ooh, look, that's Pinocchio in that scene, or look, there's a I don't know, there's a little wink to Fantasia there, or there's a whatever. And so that was pretty much my enjoyment of it, is that it's just kind of on a disposable sort of level of this show for me. And I think it is much better than most of the remakes.
So for you, that's not saying much, right?
That's true. but I don't know. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, so once upon a time, I'd first heard of it. I'm a musical theater obsessive, and my favorite musical ever is a musical called Into the Woods, which I won't say too much about it, but essentially it takes a bunch of different fairy tale characters. So it has, a little bit of Riding Hood, and what if she met Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, and they made up with Cinderella. And so, I always sort of have that element running through my head, especially when I hear that, oh, here's this show that, as you said, sort of brings in these different Disney characters and has them interact together in a different environment. And it also, came from Eddie Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, who were two of the writers behind one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Lost. And so when it first came about in 2011, I was like, okay, I'll definitely check it out. And I think I watched the first, I want to say like season and a half, maybe first 2 seasons. And then whether it was due to time or just waning interest, I sort of dropped out of it. And then back in 2014, I think it was, I was given the opportunity to podcast about it when season 4 was coming back, which was the half seasons. The first half was the Frozen arc, the much maligned Frozen arc. The second half was the Queens of Darkness, where it had Cruella de Vil and Ursula and Maleficent sort of as the big bads there. So in the process of doing that, I binge watched all 3 seasons in a row. And I will definitely back up Rachel there in that, I think the first season is good on a binge, but starting in the second season, I think it's still enjoyable. And I will say throughout this conversation that the performances and the actors, for the very much most part, are all top notch and oftentimes very much transcend the material itself and make it a lot better than it could be if it was done by, worse actors. But around season 2, season 3, you get to sort of more convoluted, murky plot territory. I will say season 3 is a bit of a reprieve. They do some interesting things and have some interesting fun twists thrown in there. But especially, starting to cover the show, you get a lot more granular with it. And so when you really have to wrap your head around, like, okay, here's this magical object that they bring in for the week that does this thing, but they're not going to mention it again ever. It's just for one-time use. Oh, here's this relationship when they were this way in this episode and this way in this episode. Makes you go a little crazy, even though you're still enjoying it. We ended up stopping the podcast right in the second half of season 6. I ended up finishing season 6, and maybe this will hopefully not color anyone's opinion of me in any way throughout the course of this conversation. I actually have not watched season 7, the reboot season. I was waiting to hear thumbs up or general thumbs down about it before I decided to check it out. I think I'll hear from the two of you whether I should invest my time in it. I think the jury's kind of out at this point, especially knowing that this is the last season. But yeah, that's sort of my history with it. I sort of dipped my toes in the water for a bit when it aired, took my foot out, then submerged myself in it. Very much so, and then I decided to get out of the pool before Adult Swim was over.
There you go. Full disclosure, I actually haven't watched season 7 either. I know, I just felt like it was done. I don't know. I just haven't. I have it on my DVR waiting, but I didn't watch it. But Amber, what do you think about the show?
Yeah, so my history with it, I watched all of season 1 and we loved it, mostly. I was really upset about a main character death at the very beginning, which most people don't even remember. Rachel was like, that happened? And I was really upset at the time. And then
Can we spoil it? Can I ask you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Was it Graham?
Yeah, I was furious.
Jamie Dornan. Well, he went on to do some different stuff after that.
Some different stuff. But I was so mad that I basically didn't forgive the show, but I finished the season. And then when I went back to watch it for Rachel was like, hey, Amber, do you want to talk about Once Upon a Time with Mike Bloom? And I said, well, yep, I'll watch it all. So I finally went back and watched it, and it looks like I had watched the first episode of season 2, and I was like, I'm done. So I kept watching it this past month, and I finished, and I'm caught up. Yay! And it's fun, I think. But I don't know how to, whether binging it's better or watching it weekly is better, because I just devoured it like something. Drinking a waterfall.
Yeah, you're probably the most up to date as far as the story, I think.
Yeah, I got all the facts. They're right here. Like cramming for a test.
Yeah. So, okay. One thing I wanted to ask before we kind of dive into the characters is there a character that for you think was better portrayed on the show than in the movies, and one that was worse portrayed in your mind? And I will start. Yeah. I think that Merida was better portrayed. I'm not saying her story was that great, but I felt because in my opinion, in that movie, I don't hate the movie, but I feel like it sets it up for this great thing. We're going to see her out with her bow and arrow, and she's going to be storming the castle. It's going to be really exciting. This is going to be really great. And it turns into this domestic dispute thing with her mom and the bear and stuff. And so I felt like when Merida here on this show, we finally got to see that character that I had wanted to see in the movie. So that was exciting for me. The one that I think was way worse, and I can never understand, is their treatment of Cinderella. Why waste one of the most iconic princesses in all of Disney? And definitely top 3 for sure. And on a 1 or 2 episode arc in season 1, that just baffles me. And so that was the one that was very frustrating. I know they brought her back for season 7, but I don't know. I was
a totally different Cinderella. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
So I was really annoyed by that. Was Cinderella, but I think Merida was better than in the movie.
Yeah. So I guess I would say sort of by default, the Snow White portrayal in this is so much more three-dimensional. It has to be, right? Because it's a main character. And so, I always love when we get to see Jennifer Goodwin like don the leather and the bow and arrow. I think they even lampshaded this at one point in like season 5 or 6 that like it's there are long gaps between when we get to see Snow White be badass, and I love that considering that like yes, Snow White and the Huntsman, whether you call that an actual adaptation or not, tried to go for that as well, more of the like Katniss Everdeen meets Snow White, but I feel like the original Snow White what was much more two-dimensional of just like the typical, I mean, she really, set the mold there for the singing princess archetype that I feel like Snow White really improves upon. I'm trying to think about, I don't know if this counts as a Disney character, but I feel like their take on Little Red Riding Hood was really cool. Again, for when she was in, the 2 seasons, and then when she got on that other show and they promptly like kicked her off, except when they...
Hey, don't call Chesapeake Shores some other show. Hashtag Hallmark, baby.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I should not be I should not be impugning the actual material that sort of that applies this podcast. But they also did we're also going to be describing several plot points that sound absolutely ridiculous if you don't watch the show. But like they brought her back for those 2 episodes when she hooked up with Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Which is
just because.
Yeah, which is just because. So ridiculous. I mean, I guess, and again, this isn't a Disney character necessarily, but I would say that we can talk about like the Zelina character later on, but the way they did the Wicked Witch of the West was interesting in season 3, but then when they brought her back and made her a regular character throughout, I could see where they were coming from, but it almost like, I don't know, I had that Margaret Hamilton, version that's so iconic in my head that I love Rebecca Mader. Again, love me some Lost, love me some Charlotte, but at the same time, like, it just sort of didn't make the character fun anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What about you, Amber?
Well, who do I love from the show that was better? I mean, obviously Captain Hook is like really great as Captain Hook, like, oh, shiver me timbers. But I feel like a lot of the stuff that they end up doing with Hook is really fun. And the way that like they call back to all of his piratisms, I really enjoy the way they did that. And also he's a dreamboat. But, and I'm not going to call the guy with, in the cartoon a dreamboat.
Captain Hook in the cartoon is very slapstick, like super
and then and Ursula was just the worst.
Oh yeah, totally forgot about that. I mean, speaking towards what you said about Cinderella, I mean, that's one of the most iconic Disney villains of all times. You could say that about Maleficent as well. Maleficent had some early stuff in like season 1 a bit, but like Ursula was gone in like 2 episodes in the 4th season. It was a little, and they gave her like a redemption arc that like she found her father again, and now everything is well. It was strange. I'm happy that with Cruella de Vil, they totally went in the direction we thought they were going to, which was to make her like bat effing insane.
Which was amazing. She's great.
So much fun.
Yeah, she was really good. I think they maybe sometimes were afraid because they had such great characters. We'll talk about Regina and Rumple, but almost afraid to have other villains like outshine. Another one I think they did a disservice to was the King Arthur run. I don't know. He wasn't my favorite.
I think I'm a bigger fan of the King Arthur arc than some, but because I did like the turn, which actually has become sort of a trope of Disney movies nowadays of like, oh, you think this person's the hero, where actually they're the villain the whole time. But I did like that they sort of ended up turning heroic King Arthur into like a whiny little baby. I can understand how annoying that is, but I did like turning the character onto his head. Oh, you know what I will say also? Hades. I mean, it's tough to sort of, improve on James Woods' really smarmy performance in Hercules. And God bless Greg German, loved him on Ally McBeal, but they didn't know what to do with that character, unfortunately.
Agreed. Yeah.
A waste. And they hardly ever used the blue hair effect.
I know. Well, it didn't look very good, to be honest. So maybe it was for the best.
First person we're going to talk about is Regina, played by Elena Parilla. And kind of what were your thoughts about her character arc through the show and just the character in general? What about you, Mike?
Yeah, so, I mean, she's built up to be the big villain in, the first season. She is the evil queen. But I loved, again, first season's obviously my favorite, but I love what they did at the end where you sort of give her this backstory where I want to say she's sympathetic, but you understand where she's coming from, right? Where she's brought up by this horrible mother in Cora. She has this love of Daniel the stable hand, and it all goes awry. So that being said, it was a little bit of, awkward, squeezing into, like, how does she fit back into the main cast now that she's not evil? And I liked a couple of times that they sort of dealt with her, trying to really balance out. I mean, quite literally, there's an arc where she tries to remove the evil part of herself, and it brings up those philosophical questions. Lana Parrilla is a fantastic actress and a beautiful actress, so I think she does probably one of the best jobs of the performance, which again is definitely saying something. I personally just feel bad for the character because it seems like she consistently kind of gets pooped on, especially with what ends up happening to Robin Hood. Like, it just, this poor woman can never be happy, it seems.
Yeah. Poor Regina. She's obviously the best, and the Evil Queen is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, hands down, she's the best part of the show. I don't, like, even when the show itself is really struggling and everyone's being convoluted and ridiculous, she's amazing. Everything she does is great, so.
Yeah, agreed. I think because that she adopted this child, like, there is always sort of a feeling of, like, what is up with her? Like, this is interesting. And I kind of like just seeing her go back and forth with Emma. And I think they got the chemistry right in almost every case in this show, whether it's the actual couples or the various people kind of their different sparring off. And I think she has a lot of growth. And I really agree. And you can just tell that Lena is just having the time of her life in this role and just having so much fun. And so I agree. So let's talk about Snow and Charming. And that's Jennifer Goodwin and Josh Dallas. And they actually are a couple. And they met on this show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just think they have amazing chemistry. Like, you can tell that they're a couple. Because,
you would hope so.
Yeah. But they really do. And Amber and I can speak for the fact that real life couples don't always have great chemistry in their Hallmark movies.
They like to try that on Hallmark Channel, and not all the time is it a hit.
But in this case, I just think they have super great chemistry. I really love them. And it didn't matter kind of what silly thing they're having them do, because like anyone knows that if like I can accept the most ridiculous contrivances in the world if I feel like it's a couple that has chemistry and I like them. And so I just really enjoyed them whenever they were on.
Yeah, I mean they were really like probably one of the biggest plot lines of the first season, right? It was like this I wouldn't say it's like a will they or won't they. It's like a when will they realize that they're in love with each other and get together? But it was really interesting where like he had a girlfriend and all these sort of weird dynamics interwoven in the first season, to the point of where when the second season started, you could tell the writers were like, what do we do now? And so I agree that again, I said that before, I love seeing Jennifer Goodwin, draw that bow and arrow in the Enchanted Forest and really like become the heroine that she's meant to be. I love seeing Josh Dallas rock his goofy wigs and trying to be, shepherd boy in the flashbacks. But unfortunately, I feel like they really wanted to keep these characters around, but they're kind of wasn't anything for them to do, especially separately. I feel like when I was covering the show, we always lumped them together in one part because it felt very rare that those two had separate things that they were pursuing. Yeah. It always felt like they were sort of like moving together as one unit. But that being said, they obviously, have this interesting relationship as well, where because of this time shift, their daughter is 28. They're probably in like their early 30s, mid 30s. So it's weird to have your daughter as one of your peers, which has the least of Once Upon a Time's complicated familial relationships. But so I really like the performers, and I think the characters were fun, especially early on. I kind of wish that they had come up with more stuff for them to do as individuals rather than have them. I mean, for a good part of the latter half of the show, they were like, all right, we'll take care of our baby back in the apartment and then just sort of twiddle our thumbs and wait for the next thing to fall in our lap.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I am not a huge fan of Mary Margaret and David. I'm just going to say it. I think they're really boring. But I love Snow and Charming, and I don't mind Mary Margaret and David when they are being like super mom and daddy to Emma, like, oh, well, you better get in by curfew, and like disapproving parents. And when she's like, precious child, let me bake you some cookies. Those parts are really funny for me. But like most of the stuff when they're in Storybrooke, I was like, oh, just take me back to the evil queen.
Well, so that's a good question, though, because, obviously after the first season, they sort of have this epiphany and they realize who they are. Do you still feel like after that, though, when theoretically the characters are supposed to be blended together, you still felt like David and Mary Margaret just weren't acting as, I don't know, epic as they might have been, literally once upon a time?
Yeah, basically whenever Snow and Charming are in Storybrooke, they're just really boring. And they're always like, oh, well, we're the coolest ever, but they don't do anything in Storybrooke. They're only cool when they leave Storybrooke, in my opinion. Yeah, obviously.
All right. So then we have Emma, played by Jennifer Morrison. And I think it's kind of a miracle that I liked Emma because I hated Jennifer Morrison on How I Met Your Mother.
But you were supposed to, right? Like, because the last time you remember of her is her leaving, spoiler alert, she leaves Ted at the altar. So you're like, oh, no, that's not.
No, she played Zoe. She played this,
she was
like,
the activist, right?
Yeah, the activist one. And I hated Zoe. And I that, so the fact that I warmed up to Emma as much as I did showed that she did a good job, I think. And it's always easy to be critical of sort of the hero character, the lead character, who's kind of, whether I feel like it's always easier to like Han Solo more than Luke, or whatever kind of a thing. And I think that's kind of true here. But I like her. I think that it's interesting to see her dynamic with Georgina as it grows over the course of the seasons. And of course, once Hook comes on board, then it becomes a lot more exciting, I think, because she and Colin have such great chemistry together.
So are you Team Hook or Team Neil then? I'm assuming you're Team Hook.
Are there people who are Team Neil?
I'm Team Neil, admittedly.
What?
I liked, maybe it's because, I liked Michael Raymond James from his one season stint in True Blood, but I thought him and Emma had some chemistry as well, especially since we knew they had history together, as opposed to like, hey, these two met in the, in the Enchanted Forest when Emma accidentally went in there, and now they're like, they're going to get together. Maybe I felt for Balefire, and that's why I sort of like, I wouldn't say sided with him, because Hook did grow on me as well, and I'm sure we'll talk about him, but yeah.
We will.
Jennifer Morrison, I think she does a really good job in it. I do think there are some points when she suffers from a bit of like, her face is constantly stuck in like a furrowed brow and like an open mouth worried expression, because they constantly place Emma in these weird situations. But all the power to her. She is really like, they've put Emma through a lot of random stuff and had a lot of stuff happen to her, but she's been able to try to fight it. I mean, they tried to make her the dark one for an entire half of a season, and she played with it as much as she could. So I give her all the credit, and the fact that like the interesting thing of like giving her magic in the middle of the third season, which I think definitely changed the game in terms of like having her get involved in the main plot. I'm glad they did that, because I felt like they were starting to run out of ideas of like, okay, if Emma is not magic, how do we keep her involved with the plot, considering that, she was the crux of the first season. So I'm glad they sort of did that to keep her as the main character. I think you make a great point, Rachel, that sometimes we underrate the main character of these franchises just because sometimes we like to blur our eyes and look more so towards the scenery or the chorus dancers to say like, oh yeah, what are these people doing? I like these people. But I do feel like Jennifer Morrison, for all the stuff that she's, all the stuff the character's been dealt with the past 7 seasons, has really done an amicable job of putting out a great performance.
Yeah, I agree. She does do a really good job, and as Rachel probably knows, and you don't, I live for side characters. So when there is a main character that I enjoy, it's pretty good job for them. And she does do a good, but she like, I got really frustrated with her always being the answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But every problem, well, obviously Emma can fix it because she's just Emma the savior. Hooray. I mean, it sort of became uninteresting that every problem was just going to be solved in episode 22 by Emma just having magic or something. Yeah. Believing in herself enough.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that, it's tough because you can tell that like the show wanted to keep her the main character when like there could be other characters that could get brought to the forefront. I don't know if they just felt like, okay, Jennifer Goodwin, or actually the same thing with Jennifer Goodwin. Jennifer Goodwin, no matter what her involvement in the episode is, was always the first name on those credits when it pops up, even if she might be only moderately involved in the episode. So maybe they just felt like, okay, we started with Emma, let's sort of keep her as this through line throughout, even though, as you said, it becomes like sort of a case of sometimes, and this again, her sort of serving the plot when it's convenient, sometimes she'll have that superpower of, oh, I know when you're lying, I can help solve the case. And sometimes she is dull as a bag of rocks and like completely gets tricked and falls into traps, almost in like the same episode sometimes.
Yeah.
So the next person we're going to talk about is Rumpel. Mr. Gold, played by Robert Carlyle, and I think he, along with Regina, are the highlights of the show, in my opinion. They are both having the time of their lives. They're so much fun, and I really liked his storylines with Belle. I thought that they were way better than the live action version remake. And I don't know, I just thought it was kind of an interesting take on the story, and I liked his sort of, when they brought in his son, I thought that was kind of an interesting sort of dynamic to bring into the character, make him have to make some choices. And so, yeah, I liked Rumpel. What did you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, co-signed in that, Robert Carlyle and the character of Mr. Gold / Rumpelstiltskin, he's the other character that you feel like is really having fun with it, because he can be, if we're talking about like D&D alignment, he's like the chaotic evil or the chaotic neutral, where like he'll do whatever he wants to as long as like there's something in it for him. And I did like the backstory as well, and how he sort of connects with everything, especially how he connects with Peter Pan, which might be one of my favorite like twist reveals in Once Upon a Time history. That was such a good reveal. This might be a hot take. I feel like when he sacrifices himself to help save the town and get rid of Peter Pan, I feel like that kind of should have been the end of him. He's fantastic, and I love him. But I feel like when we brought him back, we went to this vault, and we brought him back through the weird black goo. It basically became like a weird, and I'm sure we'll talk about this with Belle. The dynamic became very odd. It became a little cyclical, where like he'll do something bad, but he'll hide it from her, and she says, okay, no lies this time. He says, okay, then she finds out, and she gets mad and leaves him, and then it just sort of keeps going in a circle. So I felt like him doing that was such a selfless and such almost an out of character move that I really enjoyed him sort of going out on that note. Maybe it was also because he had to come back, Neil had to die, so that sort of like hit a peg.
You're like hashtag Team Neil all day every day.
All day, every day. Yeah, it's like painted on the back of every one of my shirts. People still don't know what it means, but you know what? I'm going to get it trending again.
Hashtag. Yeah, one of my favorite things on the show was whenever they would have like that create the ripping the heart out in the magic thing. I always thought that looked super cool. I don't know.
This is going to sound terrible. Every time they pull the hearts out, I'm like, that looks so delicious. Like some sort of red Jolly Rancher. Like, could you even imagine? So good.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen season 1 of Game of Thrones, but they get into a very similar territory.
They don't look as good.
No, not as good. Once Upon a Time does a better job with their craft services of really dusting up their hearts.
But so as far as Mr. Gold goes, I think he's kind of lame. Mr. Gold. Rumpelstiltskin in Enchanted Forest is amazing. But once we get to actual Mr. Gold, like, I feel like all of his schemes don't even make sense. Like, even once it's all at the end and it's all revealed what his plan was the whole time, like, that's your plan? But I should have not expected more, because they make portals to different worlds like they're just going out of style. And it took him, 300 years to figure out a way to get to the land without magic? I mean, come on, Rumpelstiltskin. Get better at plans.
I believe there was one time when he literally told Belle he wanted to take over the world. And it's just like, we have reached like the peak moment. But yeah, I mean, to your point about portals, I believe we actually like tried to track this as we were covering it on the podcast. Like, so portals can be made through a magic bean. You could use the magician's hat from, Mr. Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan, when he used to be on the show. You could have a mermaid do it. You could like open up the magic door that the author created. There were so many different ways to create portals, and I'm glad, because I like to explore other worlds, and I'm sure we can talk about that. That's really what the half seasons were utilized for. But at the same time, that's a good example of like how many plot elements as a Once Upon a Time fan you have to keep track in your head at once in order to really like figure out sometimes what the heck is going on.
Yeah, I just didn't even try, to be honest, when I watched it. I just was like, okay, I'll watch it tonight, see what's going on tonight. I don't know. It was very like soap opera-ish, I think, about it in that way.
Yes. I did feel, especially in the later seasons, it got a little soapy, especially like when we get to, and I'm sure we can talk about Zelina, but like the Zelina was masquerading as Maid Marian the entire time, and she's having your baby. Like, that is so. I mean, they literally did evil twins.
They literally did evil twins.
Like, it's got so soapy later on. But you stay for the performances, and again, I can't say enough that these actors took some suspect material sometimes and really spun straw into gold.
Talk about Henry. And this is played by Jared Gilmore. And for me, with Henry, his main job on the show is to push Emma into doing things and to push Regina into either not doing things or doing things, depending on where she's at in the show. And so he does a good job with that. But I think that can make him kind of irritating too, because that's his job, is to push people into doing things they don't necessarily want to do, or not do things that they want to do. And I think he's the weakest of the cast as far as acting. And so that kind of made him a little more grating also. Because a big part of my enjoyment of this show is the cast and their chemistry together. And so that's where I stand on Henry. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable why he is the weakest member of the cast, because you take a big roll of the dice in a big gamble when you say, hey, 10-year-old kid, come here and stay on this show that's going to end up lasting 6 years, and we're going to watch you grow up awkwardly. So, Jared Gilmore, I can't remember if he was the best of the Bobby Drapers. I don't remember at this point of all three of them. But, I felt like he did a fun job in the first season. I thought him and Jennifer Morrison had a really good chemistry. But again, I'll sort of say what happened with the Charmies. Once he got that kiss on his forehead and woke up, they were kind of like, okay, what do we do with him now? So I'm glad that in season 4, they brought in this author mechanic. Granted, it breaks the plot in so many ways, but at least it gives him something to do, and it makes things interesting in terms of, up to this point, like you said, Rachel, he's sort of been the kid that's sort of been carting around the book, being like, no, this is supposed to happen this way. And now he actually has sort of a purpose behind it. So I'm glad he was brought into the plot in that regard. But yeah, they tried to give him a girlfriend. That paid off as well as it basically sounds. I'm intrigued to hear from Amber, because I hear that this is a bit of a point of disagreement between the two of you.
Yes, I love Henry. Henry is the best. He is such a sweet little baby. And Rachel just hates his guts. And I wish I could show you our text message group where she's like, he's such a whiner. And I was like, how dare you? He never whines. He's the least whiny human being on earth. Because he literally never whines. Everyone's like, oh, the world's going to end. And he's like, don't worry, guys, we got this. Like, he is just like a perfect, bright hope. And Rachel hates him. And it's so rude. But I think he does a very serviceable job with what he's given. Because they admittedly don't give him a lot to do.
Yep, that's true.
And I didn't mind his little romance plot in, what do you call it, King Arthur Land, because of the twist about the whole thing where it just rips your heart out and you're like, oh, how dare they betray Henry in such a way? It made it worth it for me. I'm glad that she disappeared because she was boring, but I just love Henry. I think he does a great job, and he's just the nicest. But season 7 Henry I can't deal with him because he was a cannibal on Walking Dead.
Oh, okay.
And I just like, every time I see him, I'm like, don't trust him, he'll eat you. So,
all right. So
it's really hard.
we have a few more to go through just real quick. So we have Belle. Quick thoughts on what we thought about Belle. She was fine. I liked her. I don't know.
I mean, I was probably the most excited for this casting because, I mean, again, as a huge Lost fan, when you see Emily DeRavin, you see Clea, come on and play Belle. It's such an interesting casting that I wouldn't initially expect because, again, we've seen this woman, go crazy on the island before, but she kicks a lot of butt as Belle. I love that, that characterization really carries over from the movie of, her being confident, her being very book smart. If Emma's not the person to turn to for the answer, it's going to be Belle. She's going to be in that library. She's going to have a book. I feel like, the weakest part, again, is I thought her relationship with Rumpelstiltskin was really interesting just because, no offense to Robert Carlyle, but you look at the crocodile skin Rumpelstiltskin and you're like, oh, okay, he's going to have a love interest. This is interesting. But, like, their chemistry really makes it work. I was rooting for them throughout the first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But again, when he came back to life and it sort of became like a borderline, I don't want to say abusive relationship, but it was very torrid. I was like, Belle, get out of there. It's like when a man loves a woman, part 2, you kick him out. So I felt like she lost a little bit of characterization there, but I do really love Emily DeRavin's performance. And I thought that she did a really good job making Belle very nuanced and three-dimensional, which I thought was very tough to do considering that Belle is one of these bigger Disney princesses coming in. And I felt like she did a good job of like making a character out of it.
Yeah, she definitely brought more to Belle than is even in the cartoon, and way more to Belle than Emma Watson. Come at me, haters! But I really loved it. I think when they stylize her in iconic Belle clothing, she really pulls it off, which is kind of important for me that they look like the cartoon sometimes. I mean, they can wear other clothes, obviously, but when they are themselves, I just really like them to look like themselves. But when she got pregnant and then they lost that baby, I was just having so many lost flashbacks of like, my baby, bring back my baby.
My baby.
It was like a really rough couple of episodes for me because I was just like, someone just give her a baby. She needs to just have her child one time. But no, I really enjoy her. She's pretty good. Sometimes she is a little bit like, obviously I know all the answers for me. I like people to not know the answer sometimes, but mostly she's just wonderful.
There's also a really admittedly grown-worthy arc in season 2 where I don't know if you guys remember this, where she gets amnesia and she thinks she's a girl named Lacey who like wears crop tops and leather pants and goes to like the biker bar in town.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, beat up that guy, yeah."
Yeah, it was really weird.
That part was insane. I forgot about it, and I just barely watched it. I blocked it from my mind.
Okay, so let's talk real quick about Hook, Colin O'Donoghue. And
I think Amber wants to talk about more than just a little bit about Hook.
Okay.
I would... I don't even know I'm like, I can't even speak about Hook. It's just he's so handsome and hilarious and funny. And in the musical episode, he sings like an angel.
Oh, in the musical episode, I was in love. Oh, you finally saw that, Mike. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, as a musical fan, as bad as it can be sometimes, I always love when TV shows do musicals, whether it be Buffy or Scrubs, or heck, I watched all 2 seasons of Smash. That's just how committed I am. I loved it. I mean, I had done some research beforehand, and it turns out that a good number of the cast had actually done singing before. Like Josh Dallas was a musical theater actor.
He was good.
Yeah, like he had a really good voice. And Colin O'Donoghue has this like, I think he's put out an album before or something. Like he sings with a band, but I'm not talking like Russell Crowe sings with a band. I'm talking sings with a band and has a good voice. I know that that Jennifer Morrison has sung before. I think Lana Parrilla has sung before. So I feel like of all the shows to do it, besides like the Greg Berlanti Flash Arrowverse, I feel like this is the one to go down. So I was sufficiently impressed by it.
Yeah, it was so good. I loved it. I downloaded it, the whole thing. So the way I counted it, there's kind of 6 different big arcs. There's your I don't know, there's lands / arcs. You have Storybook in the first season, the enchantment, whatever. Then you have Wonderland, you have Neverland, you have Oz, you have Frozen, and you have the King Arthur. Those are the big ones that I thought of. And I don't know, the one that I liked the least was the Neverland, because I thought the Peter Pan was super irritating and really annoying.
Oh no, I love that Peter Pan. He's such a little douche. And it's
but I
so
also
fun.
I wasn't a big fan of Oz either. And there's just something about, I don't know, maybe I'm just too biased to the original Judy Garland, Wizard of Oz. I don't know. I've really not liked almost any modern telling of Wizard of Oz. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me for some reason. But yeah, Neverland was probably my least favorite, even though Henry gets kind of killed.
And he has this really fun time where he has to try to play Peter Pan playing him, which is like him trying to pull off. Because I loved Peter Pan might be, aside from like the Regina Gold duo, he might be my favorite villain just because I loved how much of a little douche he was. I love the ultimate twist that he was, Gold's father, who sort of selfishly abandoned him, saying that he never wanted to grow old, and it sort of turned into him. It made him a little bit more menacing, a little bit more Machiavellian. But I do agree with you that I actually didn't like the Neverland arc because there were so many episodes of them just sort of walking around the island and like getting lost and learning a life lesson along the way. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the Frozen arc either, just because you could tell. I have more admiration for it because it was the first season I podcasted about, but you kind of feel that like the execs were like, "Hey, Frozen's popular.
Yeah.
Let's bring them in here." But it did bring us Elizabeth Mitchell, brought us Juliet from Lost playing Ingrid, which was fantastic. You're talking about like nuanced villains. I thought she brought so much pathos to it. I thought the story was so interesting. I would say my least favorite might be Neverland, or it might be the Underworld one. I know you didn't mention that one, but going down to the Underworld, because I was like, awesome. Like, it started off with the 100th episode. We're going to face our past demons. And I felt like they barely did that. Plus, like, we had this big moment of, Hook sacrificing himself after he becomes the second Dark One to, save everybody. And now they sort of retcon it by being like, oh, it's okay, he can come back. None of the other characters, though. Hey, Robin, you're permanently dead. Hook can come back anytime he wants, which I'm sure
they didn't want me to quit the show twice.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that was sort of a missed opportunity, and I feel like season 5 overall, which was the Camelot stuff and the Hades stuff, might be the least liked season in the show's history. But I feel like I enjoyed Oz. I really enjoyed season 1, and season 2, which sort of had this like, I compared it to like a trimester almost, where like the first third was Emma, Snow, and Regina back in the Enchanted Forest. The second third was sort of like this, the Greg and Tamara stuff. I don't know if you remember those two.
Yes.
And then the third part was like everyone coming together and Neil comes back. I enjoyed those, but yeah, the tough thing about separating things into like clear halves are that sometimes things work much better than others do.
Yeah. I'm just going to say my least favorite place is Agrabah, because why did we ever go there? It was the worst and useless.
I felt like I love Aladdin. It might be one of my favorite Disney films. I felt bad that it was like relegated to the background. It's like, oh, Aladdin and Jasmine are coming over here, and we'll have like 3 scenes in Agrabah, and that'll be it.
And like the whole point of being in Agrabah is so that Hook can leave. Like, I don't know. Agrabah was the worst and such a waste. And I mean, I would have rather just spent more time in Storybrooke.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my least favorite, Rachel. You didn't even include it.
Oh,
that's how bad it is.
So many.
Well, and also, on that note, I also like in that season 6 part, I really liked the idea of the land of untold stories.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did some really cool stuff with it, at least starting off in season 6, where they're like, here's the Count of Monte Cristo. Here's Captain Nemo. Like, I thought it was going to be, okay, like a hard reset almost. We're going back to season 1 circumstances of, here are all these new characters that come in. But then they literally just shove them all away. They're like, all right, Black Fairy, bring them in. We got to deal with this stuff now. Like, no. I'm so surprised we got like 4 episodes of Jekyll and Hyde. I thought they were going to be like in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's true. That's kind of like the same with like the Cinderella thing. Like, why did you bring this character in for 2 episodes? Like, very weird that they do. And then there's other characters.
And like, poor Prince Philip and Aurora. They're like,
yeah.
What are they still flying monkeys? Like, has anyone found Prince Philip and Aurora?
No, I mean, no, well, yeah, so I think Aurora is like part of the daycare community. I know that my
Oh.
co-host for the Once Upon a Time podcast, Kurt Clark, has been one of the lingering mysteries as to what happened to Prince Philip's soul. Because as we remember, it got like sucked out of him by that Dementor-like thing. And I don't think he ever got it back. Like Mulan and Aurora were trying to find it, and I don't think they ever found it. So I think he might unfortunately be trapped in like a purgatory-like stance. But, Mulan's happy. Aurora seems to be happy. I guess 2 out of 3.
Is Mulan happy?
I mean, she helped, Dorothy and Red get together. She was herself a jilted lover because she pined after Aurora, and that didn't happen. But maybe they got back together. Who knows?
Definitely not us. The show doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
We just had to go visit Agrabah for a couple episodes.
Well, plus, as a reality TV fan, to see real worlder turned actress Jamie Chung from the Real World San Diego playing Mulan was fun to see.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, and how did you guys feel? I've already said what I thought about the finale. Well, at least what I think of finale season 6 finale. How did you feel about how this story arc for these main characters, how it kind of wrapped it up? Did you feel satisfied?
So I will say that, like, I would have been fine if they just, like, left us hanging and ended it with the musical episode. I mean, how fun would it have been if they were just like, and it's a musical at the end? Because I would be, but I don't know. It's just so disappointing when you think about all of the times the Dark Curse is cast, and like, I'm the fanciest, most powerful dark wizard of all time, and I will cast this dark curse that'll be unbreakable. And then they break it in an episode? Like, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because this is the woman who had Rumpelstiltskin, the man of the terrible plans. But, like, that's the plan she's been working thousands of years on. I don't know. It was a little quick for me.
Yeah, it felt, and there was some weird stuff going on at the time too, because like around the end of season 6 was when you hear like, okay, Jennifer Morrison's leaving, Rebecca Mader's leaving, the Josh Dallas is leaving, Jennifer Goodwin's leaving, so you're like, okay, they're gonna make this a series finale, and I really liked actually the end to season 3A, the Neverland arc, as much as we may disparage it, where I believe from what I remember, it was like there was another curse sort of coming down onto the entire town, and everyone just said it's like, okay, Emma and Henry, you guys need to go. We'll sort of stay behind. And you have this sort of, she says goodbye to everybody and drives away. And then Hook comes to her door and, it still continues. But I like that way of sort of her saying goodbye. Here, everyone gets their happy ending, which I think is deserved for some characters, especially someone like Regina. Poor Regina. But it did feel a little interesting to be like, okay, the evil queen is now rehabilitated and helping them. It's because they were going for like the big, giant spectacle in a finale. And yeah, I think that's one of those unfortunate circumstances of, making your seasons have to be 20-something episodes and then also doing these 2 arcs sometimes, is that sometimes you have to cram a lot of plot in there and really rush things along. And I totally agree that, like, it took us so long to find out who the Black Fairy was and why she was doing what she does, that when it happened, she's like, here's the curse. Okay, it's broken. Everyone's happy now. Like, that was it. But I did like, I haven't watched season 7, but even if it didn't work, even if it didn't lead into a next season, I did like an epilogue of, Henry's daughter coming to his door and saying that I'm your daughter. I thought it was a really fun bookend to the, the very, not the very first scene from the series, but, the third scene maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the beginning of the series.
The beginning, yeah.
What scene do we need? We don't care.
I just like that they ended with the show with everyone happy and taken care of and everything's good. And because I hate when shows try to be too clever.
Yeah. I will say this about season 7. The Dark Curse in season 7, probably the best one.
Oh, no. And maybe this is drawing me into this. Yeah, talk a little bit about season 7, because it's sort of like a, I don't know, it reminds me of like a Saved by the Bell, the new class, where like there are a couple of holdovers, like
it's like Grease 2, Saved by the Bell, the new era.
Yeah, so Frenchie drops by and like, oh, Frenchie, oh God, I don't want to be like you, Frenchie.
No, it's actually been it was pretty lame, I'm gonna be honest, for like the first 5 or 6 episodes. But once I got past like episode 6 and we find out, the like why the Dark Curse was cast and all that, It actually really picks up. It gets a lot better once we know like what's going on. And also, spoiler alert, once Regina and Gold are awake, it's also more fun.
So what's sort of the plot behind it? Is that like after like another curse hit and sort of everyone kind of went to sleep and now they're waking up again?
Well, like that's what they awake, like they know who they are. But so what happened is Henry like grew up and he was like, I need to go find my own adventure. So he goes and he runs into Cinderella and he gets kidnapped by Lady Tremaine. And so Hook and Regina come to like save him. And then Regina decides to stay there with him. And they run into Old Hook, and it's amazing. You guys, Old Hook is the best. Can we talk about Old Hook again? Remember Old Hook? When he was in the Wish Realm or whatever?
Oh, yeah, when he had like the paunch and like the balding. That's the other interesting thing as well, is like because they've had these interesting finales sometimes. Because I remember the season 3 finale was right when they went like Back to the Future. They went like back in time and like prevented their parents from meeting, and then Emma was disappearing in the photo or something like that. And then the season 4 was the Wish Realm, right? It was, or no, I guess that's the story, because the Wish Realm was Emma wishing that she wasn't the savior anymore. Yeah. And the story realm was like Isaac being like, and then I was the best person. Look at all this stuff that happened. And that was like a weird like wackadoo universe where Gold is the white knight and Emma is the evil, woman. I feel like that sort of parlays nicely into the musical episode where, when you get used to seeing these characters in these circumstances, it's fun sometimes to like change them up a little bit and see these characters. And I'm assuming the actors are having the time of their lives doing something different for once.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where the show shines the most, is when you can just tell the actors are like, I have the best job in the whole world. Look at me just being like running around with a fake belly and acting all ridiculous. Like,
I mean, because who doesn't want to be like in a fairy tale? Like that's, I would think as an actor, that would just be something so exciting.
I thought it would be fun for you to say, which character do you think would win on Survivor, assuming there is no magic?
Assuming there is no magic. Well, I feel like the question, so Mr. Gold, because I've actually thought about this, Mr. Gold could be great. I mean, again, because honestly, like reality TV infects my brain at this point. I mean, you do a good job at like wheeling and dealing, but the question is, can he win a jury vote? Because I feel like people come to him, but only because he has power. Mm-hmm. Like, but usually people really don't like him. You know what? I would say that Belle. I feel like Belle would be underestimated. I feel like she's wicked smart and very talented, and I feel like she knows like how to figure out certain dynamics. She can read a room, so I could totally see like very Boston Rob Amber situation. They both get to the end together, and they're like, "Screw you, Rumple. We're giving it to Belle." Not to compare Belle to Amber Burkett too much, but I feel like Belle would totally deserve the win there.
I think you nailed it. Way to go. Okay, and then very similar, which pair would be the best for the Amazing Race?
Oh, I mean, I feel like in terms of like the confessionals, I feel like Hook and Emma would be fun. Just because Hook is great with the one-liners. But I feel like for an actual competent Amazing Race team, Jessica Lee, who I have the pleasure of doing Amazing Race podcasts with, she always says that usually the most boring teams are the ones that succeed the most. I kind of feel like David and Mary Margaret would do really well for that reason. They're also like both very athletic, and I think that they also have this like fortitude. I mean, one of the key phrases that's existed throughout Once Upon a Time's lore is like, we'll find each other. And the fact that they were so resolute towards it, I think just really holds when they're in the countless times the face of adversity. And I feel like that happens on The Amazing Race, where stress is at an all-time high. I feel like it's a drop in the bucket compared to how many times the world has arguably almost ended on Once Upon a Time.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
good choices.
Good choices. Which team do you think would be the like arguing couple?
Oh, I mean, that's got to be Belle and Gold, right?
I don't know. I was thinking like, what if Zelina and Regina were a pair?
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would totally get in an argument about like
Yeah.
who's right, who's taking the roadblock, because like Zelina wants to like show that she can do it, but Regina believes that she can do it. Yeah, I think that they might be, even though they're two extremely powerful women in their own right, they would definitely be first out of that season.
Oh, that made me so happy.
Oh,
Thank
love
you
it.
so much for indulging me.
I'm glad I could scratch that itch. That was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed our interview with Hannah Peterson that we posted on Monday. And then we are going to be having our recap of When Calls the Heart with Ruth Hill tomorrow. So take a look at that. This weekend on Hallmark Channel on Saturday, we have Home by Spring with Stephen McQueen, the grandson of Steve McQueen. It's pretty exciting. And Poppy Drayton and Kix Brooks from the legendary country singer Kix Brooks. It's very exciting.
And do not forget Dawson's mom.
Oh yeah,
Beth Hume.
Oh yeah, that's right. So it won actually really.
Mary Margaret. There we go. It really all ties in.
I'm really excited for this one. I think it looks fun. I like kind of the country ones. And so that will be fun. And then we have a new episode of One Calls the Heart and Meet the Pete's on Sunday. So look forward to that. Next week on the podcast, we are going to be doing the Spring Fever and bonus. They had some in the middle that are the non-royal movies that they've had. And so we'll talk about The Sweetest Heart for one, and some of the other ones that they've had. So it should be a lot of fun. Home by Spring we'll talk about. And so look forward to that. And Mike, where can people find you?
So you can always follow me on Twitter at @MikeBloomType. That's primarily where I push out notices about all the random things that I'm doing. I do Survivor exit interviews for Parade, and I'll be doing Big Brother interviews, Amazing Race exit interviews. I have a bunch of interviews up there. I'll also be doing some coverage of film festivals and other stuff going on in the next couple months. In terms of podcasts, I do a weekly Survivor podcast called the RHAPBNB on Rob Has a Podcast, where I do very stupid, silly, fun things around Survivor each and every week. A lot of fun and games going on there. I do coverage of RuPaul's Drag Race, which is now just started its 10th season. Absolutely love that show. I'm doing coverage of Saturday Night Live on a podcast called SNL Funhouse. I do a movie podcast called The Hamster Factor. I do the Survivor Historians periodically. I'm going to be talking on a podcast about The Simpsons, which is a show that Rachel and I have talked about before that we both hold very near and dear to our hearts. And I'm sure a bunch of other random assortments of things. But I'm so happy to come on and you know, relive these feelings. You know, I was a little nervous coming on here just because I, to be honest, haven't really, as I mentioned, thought about the show for about an hour and a half, not an hour and a half, a year and a half or so since I dropped off in season 6. But like just getting to talk with you guys about this really drudged up a lot of excitement and energy and feelings that I had towards the show. So thank you so much for having me on and having my plugs take up, you know, 3/4 of the length of your show. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. This was such a treat for us, and we hope that we can have you on again.
Absolutely.
We'll make you watch Chesapeake Shores just for Red Riding Hood.
I'll do it. I will follow her, much like a wolf follows the moon.
So, Amber, where can people find you?
As always, I'm at Amber Brainwaves on Twitter, and that's it.
And that's great. And you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and YouTube. Check that out. I have my review of Ready Player One up, and so you'll want to check that out. And I will also put a link down to that podcast that Mike and I did on our top 10 favorite Simpsons episodes. That was really fun. So make sure you're following us at Hallmarkies Pod on iTunes and on Instagram, Twitter, all the social media. We post daily on our social media, so you definitely want to check that out. And thanks again. And it was so fun talking Disney.
It was Disney. You're so right.
You snuck some Disney in with your Hallmark podcast.
Yes. Oh, she tricked me.
All right. Well, thanks, and we'll talk again soon.
Right. Bye.
Bye.